What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Fantasy Addiction Network. We are already going into week 5. This video we're going to talk about all of the waiver wire pickups that you need to make this week to continue staying on top of all your fantasy leagues. But hey, before we get started, if you're new to the channel, please hit that like and subscribe button. It really does a lot to support the channel and continue to help us be able to do this for you guys. So thank you so much for doing that, and let's get right into the video. Alright guys, you should know the drill by now. We go through position by position from quarterback to tight end, and we look at tier 1, 2, and 3 guys. Just again, a quick reminder, tier 1 are guys that you can pick up and throw right into your lineup if you're in need. Tier 2 guys are people that, based on if you have a deeper league, you can probably start right away. Otherwise, just someone that you probably want to stow on your bench and hope that their production continues to climb. Tier 3 guys are just people that you want to have an eye out for. Players that maybe had a good game this week and we want to see if they can continue it, or just guys that should be stepping up and getting a bigger role soon. So that's basically what that means. So let's get into it right here with the quarterbacks. If you're in need of a quarterback, this is a great week for you. Better make sure you jump on that waiver wire. We've got 4 options this week, all tier 1 guys. Some of which we'll get into why for each one, but we'll begin with Taylor Cornelius. Had himself a day, 24 for 31, 211 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and then also 4 carries, 36 yards, and 1 touchdown on the day. Really strong performance from Taylor Cornelius for the Vipers. Looks like he has secured that spot, with Quentin Flowers demanding a release and Aaron Murray still dealing with that foot injury. It looks like Taylor Cornelius has a good shot of being the leading quarterback going forward. The Vipers offense has gotten better each consecutive week, so we'll see if they can continue that going into week 5, but Taylor Cornelius should be owned in all formats going forward. All right, next quarterback, Luis Perez, took over for Matt McGloin this week, who was out due to a rib injury. He went 18 of 26 for 150 yards and 1 touchdown. Could have easily had 200 yards and 2 touchdowns if BKL McKay would have caught the ball that was right on his hands, and he just turned around too fast, or he just didn't have his full attention span. Unfortunately, he could have given Luis Perez a lot better day, but overall, definitely playing a lot better than Matt McGloin was. I don't think there's any risk of him losing his starting spot unless he starts to play poorly. So Luis Perez is going to be a starting quarterback going forward. Not going to give you the high ceiling that you're going to get with a lot of other guys, but he's playing really well right now. High quarterback rating, very efficient, should be able to give you a decent floor and baseline each week. Okay, next guy, Phillip Nelson for the Dallas Renegades. Landry Jones re-injured his knee in this game. Looks like he suffered a MCL sprain, should be out for at least 4 to 6 weeks. So that brings Phillip Nelson back in. He didn't perform too well in week 1. Good completion percentage, but wasn't able to force the issue and get any deep downfield throws. This team has developed a little bit. We've seen the running game come alive. Donald Parham is a stud, so hopefully he'll be able to continue that momentum. It's not like Landry Jones was actually playing that great, so hopefully Phillip Nelson will be able to maintain the momentum that this team has, and if he's able to perform at the same level as Landry Jones, that's going to be a starting quarterback in this league, and he should be rostered in all formats. And then lastly, we have BJ Daniels. He took over in the second half for the Dragons. 5 for 10, 100 yards, 1 touchdown on the day through the air. Also had 7 carries for 84 yards. So that rushing total is going to bring up his baseline tremendously, just based on the way that fantasy points are scored for quarterbacks getting rushing yards. Definitely someone to monitor going forward, especially if you had Brandon Silvers, most likely going to be the starting quarterback from here on out. Okay, jumping over to the running backs, we have a couple of tier 1 guys we want to talk about here. All right, Darius Victor, 18 carries for 82 yards, also had 1 target on the day, no reception. So more of your power running back, someone that's not going to get a lot of receptions, but the Guardians have shifted more and more each week to be a more run-centric team, and Darius Victor is by far the best running back on that team. Should be getting the goal line carries as well once they actually have some. But this team is getting a little bit more solid on the offense now that Luis Perez is kind of settling in there as the quarterback. Their defense is really good, so they should have a lot of opportunities to salt the game away. Darius Victor should continue to get a lot of work. Definitely a guy you want to target if he's on your waiver wire. Kenneth Ferro, another name to look at. He probably is already owned, but if he's not, make sure you check him out. 5 carries, 26 yards, 1 touchdown on the day. 2 weeks in a row with a touchdown. Also had 2 catches for 14 yards. He looks to be the best back. It was slowly becoming more, more evident which running back was going to be the best in this system. Kenneth Farrow is the only guy that really did anything this week, and he's pretty much been consistent each week. Trey Williams has had some up and downs. Jaquan Gardner's pretty much been bad ever since the season started, but Kenneth Farrow has been the most consistent. So hopefully this is a sign of more things to come. If he's getting the goal line carries and he's the running back that's getting any work in the passing game, with the boost to the running game that BJ Daniels will provide, Kenneth Ferro should be a really good option. Martez Carter is another name that you guys want to look out for, the running back for the LA Wildcats. If he was dropped or he wasn't picked up last week, or like I said, if he was dropped because of his injury this week, there really isn't any other good running backs on LA, and that is a team that's going to need to score a lot of points, so make sure you don't forget about Martez Carter, even though he didn't play this week. Tier 2 guy, Jacques Patrick. I know he just had a phenomenal game, 21 carries, 108 yards, and 1 touchdown. He's done this to us already, where he had a great game in week 2 and then just disappeared in week 3. Another great game in week 4, but he hasn't shown us enough consistency yet to warrant an every week start. You can pick him up, but I would look to try to trade him right away. I don't look for this to continue, and I think his value is probably too inflated right now. And then another name to look at in your tier 3 guys, for Keith Ford for the St. Louis Battlehawks. 3 carries, 23 yards, and 1 touchdown. This is the second time that he's played this year. Barely has any touchdown, or barely has any touches, but he already has 2 touchdowns. He keeps stealing the touchdown from Matt Jones and Christian Michael there, but he looks really good every time he scored. I wouldn't be surprised if they start using him more. Definitely not advocating that you start Keith Ford in any format anytime soon, but definitely a name you want to keep an eye on, because if he starts to take over more of the role from either Matt Jones or Christian Michael, this is a very potent offense with a very good running system, so definitely want to keep an eye on Keith Ford. Okay, let's jump over to the receivers. We'll begin with our couple tier 1 guys here. A little bit weaker in terms of tier 1 from what we've seen thus far, but definite names that you want to make sure are rostered. We'll begin with Jordan Smallwood, the wide receiver for the LA Wildcats. 5 for 7, 75 yards this week. Has definitely kind of taken over that Nelson Spruce role. Playing second fiddle to Trey McBride right now, but as long as Nelson Spruce is out, Smallwood will continue to get a lot of targets. Looked pretty sharp in this one. Didn't have any touchdowns, but very consider that, how many times he was targeted, and he was targeted on conversion plays as well. Wouldn't be surprised if he starts scoring some more touchdowns as this league goes on. Again, this is kind of depending on Nelson Spruce being out for longer. We don't really know yet the extent of his injury. Let's look at the next guy, Nick Hawley for the Houston Roughnecks. 8 catches on 10 targets for 97 yards and a touchdown on this one. He's had 2 weeks now where he's looked really good, and then 2 weeks where he's completely disappeared. So again, why it's kind of a shaky tier 1 guy. Anytime you have a guy that gets 10 targets, you have to pay attention to him, but know that the run and shoot offense in Houston will have these kind of weeks where one guy will just get hyper targeted, and then the next week he completely disappears. So while I really like Nick Hawley a lot, and you have to roster him just based on his potential going forward, don't expect this kind of performance every single week. He has a very low floor. And then let's go to the last guy in tier 1 that doesn't have nearly as high of a ceiling, but also has a pretty high floor. Flynn Nagle, 6 for 6 and 76 yards in this one. Also had a 3-point conversion. He was the highest targeted receiver when Phillip Nelson played in week 1. So as we mentioned, Landry Jones is going to be out for a while. Look for Flynn Nagle to continue that decent production each week. Gives you a really nice baseline, makes a nice flex play. All right, let's look at the tier 2 guys. Brandon Reilly for the St. Louis Battlehawks. 3 for 5, 46 yards. Playing behind De'Morney Pearson-L, but he's really started to steal some of the thunder that we saw from Alonzo Russell as the season has gone on. He has 2 weeks in a row now where he's been more involved, and he's looked really explosive every time he's touched the ball. Look for them to continue to give him more looks. Kobe Pearson for the New York Guardians was the most targeted wide receiver with Luis Perez there. Only 34 yards on 5 catches, so not a tremendous production out of him, but someone that we want to keep an eye on just based on the target volume now that Luis Perez is most likely going to be the quarterback going forward. Okay, let's jump down to the tier 3 guys. Again, guys that don't need to be necessarily be picked up, but names we want to look out for. Saeed Blacknell, for the LA Wildcats. Only one catch on the day, but it was a 42-yard touchdown. Also had another deep target that he just wasn't able to come down with. Look for them to continue to use him in these situations. He's going to be a boom-bust guy because he has a floor of basically 0, but with Josh Johnson continuing to push the envelope, having one of the deepest average depth of target, or he may continue to lead in that stat through week 4, pushing the ball deep down the field very often, and he's one of the more accurate quarterbacks in this league. So look for Saeed Blacknell to continue to getting opportunities like this. Definitely a name you're going to watch out for DFS. Should be continue to be a cheap option that has a very high ceiling. And then another name, keep throwing him out there. Just don't want you guys forget about him. Casein Williams for the Seattle Dragons. Their wide receiver core really needs some help. He was slated to be their #1 wide receiver heading into the league, and he suffered a quad injury. He's been out every week thus far, but they haven't put him on IR, so he should return any week now. Definitely a name you want to just stow on your bench now that they have BJ Daniels coming back. This offense has a little more life, and he could end up doing pretty good things for your fantasy team when he comes back. All right. Last position, let's jump to the tight ends. Got 2 guys here to look out for. They may be owned, but just names. If you play in a tight end league where you have to start a tight end, definitely check these guys out. First, we have Jake Powell for the New York Guardians. He went 3 for 4, 34 yards in this one, so not a great performance, but he was targeted in the red zone twice, so that's definitely something to keep an eye out for. Luis Perez definitely has eyes for Jake Powell. And then Deandre Goolsby, 3 for 3, 41 yards, and a touchdown on the day. This guy just has a short shelf life because of the looming return of Nick Truesdale, but overall, if Nick Truesdale misses any more time, Deandre Goolsby is a really great tight end play. All right, guys, that was pretty much it for all of my waiver wire picks this week. We're going to continue to adjust our rankings and our trade values as the week goes on, so make sure you check out our website at fantasyaddictionnetwork.com. Make sure you guys can stay up to date on everything that's happening, get you guys ready for week 5. We're almost halfway through the season. We've been rolling through and seeing tons of changes around the league, so make sure you stay up to date on everything that's happening. Thank you again for watching. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and we will see you in the next video.